is the Unlearning Podcast, a show where we will begin to disrupt, dissolve, deprogram, and dismantle what we think limits us in order to reinvent, rebirth, and revolutionize the world in our most authentic selves. My name is Christina, and I'm your host. Kanye, anybody, that's what I call it.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
So when I was talking to you, not talking to you, it was just kind of your tone. And then when I listened to your podcast, I was like, okay, what part of New York? She didn't say what part. I need to figure this out because I've learned that the Bronx and New Orleans kind of have the same type of dialect. That's where I'm originally from.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like, okay, you're not quite from New Orleans, but there's something there. And everyone I've met from the Bronx, yeah, you might as well say we're all cousins. Because,
But I'm originally from Indiana. So I'm from Southern Indiana. So I consider myself a Southern person because I'm on the border of Kentucky and Indiana. That's where I'm originally from. But I've lived in New York on and off for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How do you like it?
I'm getting. Yeah, you have to like New York. Because there's no in between with this place. There really isn't. I've lived here since 98 on and off. And now that I'm getting older, it's just like, oh, it's time to make a move. I just got to figure out, really where I want to just settle down. I think about the Bay Area, but who knows? Who knows? Yeah. I would prefer the Bay Area for sure.
I'm from New Orleans. I lived in Atlanta for 10 years.
No way.
And then I came out to Denver. So I'm like a New Orleans lady, a Georgia peach, and a Denver darling. That's what I like to call myself now. And it's like, so when I lived in Atlanta, there was so many people from New York. And it was just, it's cheaper. You got the best of both worlds. It was still kind of fast paced if you looked for it. Atlanta kind of has the beauty of it could be slow South living, and then it could be metropolitan. And so you could go here and you find it here, you go downtown, it was just like the Garden of Eden. You can get whatever you want if you look for it.
Exactly.
And there were so many people from New York. It was like, oh my gosh, do you have anyone related? That's, and they're like, nope, it's cheaper. And I get the city feel without all the hoopla, in New York. Crazy. And so it's just, I've been a couple of times. I didn't stay long. I was just like, oh my gosh, I cannot. I can't. First of all, I went with someone. I was teaching at a camp in Southern New Jersey. So my background is education. Okay. So I was former educator, instructional leader. And then I got laid off this May.
Oh, okay.
And, with that came the opportunity to like, well, what do I really do?
I'm sorry.
No.
What just happened? My phone literally is on airplane. Let me just turn it all the way off. I don't know.
But it's funny because I have these quotes, and I'm switching subjects. And the quote before I went with this one, it said, apparently there's nothing that cannot happen today. And I took that as a very sarcastic, it's a Mark Twain quote, but it was very, look, Murphy's Law has been running today with what can go wrong. It's trying to go wrong. But, you just got to roll with it. That's the lesson today.
I'm like,
roll with it.
That's insane.
It's fine. We'll edit it out. It's
right. So you're in education.
So my background. So I was the first, and we didn't get to have a pre-show meeting too. So that would have kind of we would have talked a little bit more about it. But, so I was the first Black woman to open an orchestra program in Clayton County, Georgia.
Nice.
I graduated. So I lived in New Orleans all my life. I graduated from Xavier University, HBCU.
Nice.
In music education. And I my background is orchestra, so I was a violinist.
Oh, nice.
Classically trained, and opened an orchestra program at Mundy's Mill, which was basically a school that brand new building. You can build a building and you can put the old mindset there and the old trauma, and it's just a building, right? And so I had an all Black orchestra. Pretty much all my students were Black. And while there were people who were supportive, like other teachers, orchestra teachers who were supportive, the community would kind of look down on, Black kids in orchestra. And it's like, no,
they're capable.
You can do this.
Yeah.
You can do it. And, so it just, I had the pleasure, and I always say it was my first teaching experience. I had the pleasure of teaching those students, and I love them to death. Like, these kids, they still let me know on Facebook, like, one of them just got married, they've had kids. Yeah. Like, and so to see that, or, some of them who want to follow in the footsteps of education and like, I'm going to be a music teacher or just a teacher because another person like impacted their life. Right. And it's just wonderful. So it was a pleasure to teach those kids. I loved it. I love those kids. Yeah. So then, from there, kind of did like orchestra, choral programs and things, and then went back to New Orleans after Katrina, and taught there, and then wound up going into instructional leadership once I saw the inequities in the plantation mindset we were trying to bring back, and I was like, not with my people. And then from there, just like went through the ranks. Not a principal, an instructional leader. So like working with teachers, teaching and learning. And then I came up here for a job. And what I thought was a job, a manager of curriculum and instruction for over 90,000 kids, S&PE department, actually was the point where God said, you can't keep running because the things that I need you to heal from, you've been running all these years, like over 12 years. Right. And I had this urge to want to come to the mountains. And now I'm at the mountains. And so the mountains for me represent the things we have to deal with on our healing journey. And so rather than call this, what did you learn, which would make it educational, and I think, in my opinion, exclude a bunch of people who are not educators, I want to know, what did you unlearn? What did you have to give up or let go of, and what you have to replace that with in order to, make that choice to really heal and move in a direction of purpose. And so your podcast like really started to resonate with me. Just and like your picture, first of all, was adorable. Let me just say that. I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And then when I found out it was about eating, I was like, oh, this is great. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. No, it's wild because for me, I grew up in Indiana, and like just on the idea of just unlearning, just thinking about that. I think I had shared with you, like I'm unlearning a lot of things in terms of like the religious aspects of life. I grew up in the church. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I struggled with my sexuality for so long. I've always known that I was, gay, or lesbian, but at the same time, I was like, but I'm in the church and I grew up religious, and everything I've heard about, gay people was, they're going to hell, fire and brimstone, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, you name it, it was definitely like drilled into me. So when I'm assuming I was like 5 years old when I actually realized, and it wasn't anything sexual. And I think it's what a lot of people, the misconception is like, if you identify as LGBTQ, it has to be some sexual connotation behind it. And it's not so much as that. It's like it's who I'm attracted to. Has nothing to do with the idea of, I want to have this like, sexual, like crazy encounter. This is who I gravitate to. This is who I'm attracted to. And that's it. So at the age of like 5 years old, I saw a girl and I was like, oh my goodness, she's so pretty. I like her. And I couldn't really voice it at 5. I'm estimating too. It could have been 6, 7, who knows? But the point of it is,
Yeah, but early on you had something. I had an awareness.
And I knew what other girls were talking about in terms of, oh, he's cute, or that's my boyfriend. You know, when kids say things like that, I was just like, yeah, I don't get that. I don't get. I mean, that's okay, but I just don't. I don't understand. So obviously, I'm like searching and trying to figure out, why am I not feeling that? Why am I not feeling that? And then you hear all the things at church, and then I hear the things at home. And so, you know, I'm just praying to God, like, if there's anything you can do for me, get this out of me. If there's any, like, I would be praying so hard, like, please, like, I don't want this. This is too hard, you know? And as I just, you know, continued on this journey, I went to HBCU in Alabama my first 2 years in college, and it was a religious HBCU, and of course that was also then, you know, more of that actual information and message being shared. And so I was just like, God, this just can't be all there is to who you are as a God. Like, if we're thinking about God, it's more than this book. It's more than the religion I grew up in. And I can't imagine if someone is, or this being is so powerful and so amazing that they would just confine us as beings to just these cookie cutter, you know.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So it was just like, I have to find out for myself. And so I'm obviously reading and really just, you know, immersing myself in other cultures and diversity groups, and just trying to just figure it out and realize. And once I expanded beyond just the religion part, because I grew up very religious, so that was my whole world. You know, we went to church all the time. You know, like all the time. So that's all I knew. But once I stepped out of that, I mean, obviously I had opportunities to do other extracurricular things with school and what people considered secular. Like, my mom gave us that opportunity because I think she wanted us to really explore, but explore in her terms. If that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? As long as it was within her parameters, we're good. But that sexuality piece, she just couldn't wrap her head around. Like, she wanted us to travel the world and, you know, learn all that was to be learned and all that in terms of an academic sense of what she would consider, you know, what you as a learned person. But the sexuality piece was like, no, that's not education. That's fornication, you know, in her eyes. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, in the Black community, it's still one of the taboos of don't talk about it. And it's then how can we heal? How can we heal each other? How can we understand? And I'm at a point where someone had asked me the question of what box, you know, as you know, you got your podcast going. Who's your audience? You know, what box? I think humanity's box. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got struggles. Everybody's got a pain, a core wound that they're trying to figure out. And they're starting to recognize that the way we've done things in the past does not work. Maybe religion, the way that it is man-made, when God never called us to have a religion, it was a relationship.
Yes.
Maybe that's the thing we have to get back to as individuals and stop pointing the finger all the time. Labels are damnation. That's what I think of. Like, we're damning people with the labels that we're giving. Black, white, LGBTQ, this, that, everything else. You know, it's sad because we're labeling ourselves to the point where we don't see the humanness, the humanity of the spirit, the person, the way we're not seeing people in God's eyes.
Right. And
at all, in my opinion.
No, for sure. And, you know, just like you were saying before, just in terms of like, who's your target audience for your podcast? And so, especially when I started my podcast, I was like, oh, who is my target audience? Like, I really got to think this through. I need to, you know, is it just women in general? Is it just Black women? Like, and I'm just like, Alicia, it is for anybody. Everybody eats. Okay.
Yes.
I don't know.
And some of us eat. more than others.
Right. So. We're all on some sort of this, piece of the spectrum of eating. And for me to just pinpoint a particular group of people to address, I was like, no, I don't want that. I want everyone to have an opportunity to share whatever stories they have going on. And I just want to hear, other people's perspective, because if I'm just focusing just on women and their actual perspective of eating, how can we all as a collective come together and really find ways to heal from whatever that's going on with us, whether it is eating or religious-based things? Like like you said, we have to find a way to just come together as a collective and love one another and empower one another and realize there's enough for everybody. I think I think a lot of people are now realizing that whole mindset of scarcity, it's all made up. It's to keep you kind of like confined. Like, okay, you have more than me. I've got to, it's like, no, they're getting their thing, and praise them, because, the more that you celebrate them, that positivity is going to roll into whatever you're doing. And you can then, reach out to them and say, how did you do that? And then you can empower yourself to make that work for yourself. But if we're constantly that crabs in the barrel type of mentality, we're going to get in nowhere,
Mm-hmm. And now it's funny that you say that, because, and we're going to get to like the interview, but I'm loving this talk. So we're just going to keep rolling with it, if you don't mind. But I've been in spaces like you throughout my life where it's just been so dark. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to live that way. I don't want to put that out in the world, because we often say, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
But I think we need to be careful when we say that, because we just hurt people. Hey, Whether we say, hey, how can you see that you are hurting? What can we do? Who can we put you in touch with to help you?
Right.
Because to me as an educator, it's access and opportunity. Now, you may not even take it. You may say, you know what? Forget y'all, whatever, I'm gone. But at least someone has put it there before you, and you can make the choice, and it's there. Right. You always know it's there. And so I went back and forth with some of the people who were reaching out to me, because my prayer has been, with all of the things that I've dealt with and been through, I'm trying to heal a lot of trauma in my adult life.
Yeah.
I ain't even got to the childhood yet. I'm talking about the adult life.
Right.
Just help me find the tribe. Help me find my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm putting out the signal, the beacon of light. Who is going to, be that person or whatever. And most people have been like, this is amazing. This aligns. It's like yourself, like this is working. And then there have been other people kind of like, we can't be, they've not said it, but the vibe has been, well, you can't be that positive. And it had me at a point questioning, like, well, will people actually engage if it's too like, is it wrong to be Pollyanna?
Right.
Is it wrong to talk about the good things? We get so much negative thrown at us all the time. Mm-hmm. News, people talk, about each other. You can't just hear what somebody's saying without you want to chime in with your ego. Right. It's like, you know what? I'm going to stick with what I know. And for me, I need to be a light. I've been called to be light.
Yes.
And there are other people who've been called to be light. And we need to flip this pancake that everything has to be negative. Everybody's got to go through the journey, like you said, being pulled down, but not expressing or sharing. Here's how I'm trying to pull myself up, or ask for the help, or offer the help if you see someone struggling. You know what I mean?
Right.
So very interesting, the business of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, but you don't have to do business. You just have to do what you've been called to do.
Right.
And business will take care of itself.
That, exactly. And I think a lot of people, for some people, I wouldn't say everyone, but I think people that are in those positions where that negative, those characteristics come through, I think a lot of it is because they don't know what their purpose is. Mm-hmm. And then when they see you walking in your purpose, it's like, how dare you? How dare you do these things? I mean, they're not thinking this consciously, but it's probably their subconscious. It's like, how dare you do this when I am still struggling, when I'm still da-da-da-da. And it's like, that's where the mind shift happens. Like, instead of saying, how dare you, it's like, how can I? How can I get to where they are? Because if they can do it, I know I can do it. How can I? How can I be a part of that? And I think that's where we need to start heading towards. How can I be in this, state of flow and abundance and love and joy, as opposed to the opposite? Because we've been there too long. It's old at this point.
Yes.
It's the same old game.
It's the same old, right? The same old game, and nobody's winning.
Yes.
And I came to a conclusion because I shared something on Facebook earlier. Because my core wound that I'm struggling with is rejection. And I have to now start vocalizing the fear of rejection, because I've been keeping that hidden secret and it's been eating me and I've been eating it. So your podcast was very timely for me.
Right.
Because there was an episode I heard you talk with a colleague that talked about trauma, and something else. There's another, God is bringing me to another space of, okay, you've done healing. This will do for now. You're not completely healed.
Right.
Now we're going to focus on this. And I'm like, I already thought I conquered that. And it's like, but you're going to do it differently. So right. When I heard that, I did this episode, and I would just, anybody go listen to it, because first of all, y'all's banter is hilarious. And then just hearing the truth bombs that you both were dropping was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this differently. I can't keep holding on. Now what I thought was internal is now the physical. There's a physical manifestation in my own body, and I've got to heal. And so now I'm more determined to say, I have got to heal this differently for me, for my ancestors who carried this weight.
Yes.
The emotional weight, the mental weight, the psychological, and the physical, as well as the future, because I want to see my lineage and the fruits of whatever it is. It needs to end here. It stops with me, right. So that there's something else on the other side of that. Girl, I forgot what I was about to.
It's all good. It's all good.
This is a great conversation.
No, I love it, because it's so true, and it's me actually being in a position to acknowledge that my emotional eating was due to trauma. It honestly took me starting this podcast to start interviewing people to really see, like, oh, this is why you have these eating problems. You have trauma you've not addressed. Like, that's where, and it's the more I'm exposed and I'm, learning new concepts about, what trauma does to the body, and how certain triggers will then, something will happen and you don't know why you're triggered in such a way. It's jarring. And so for me, when I'm triggered, I eat. I'm like, look, I need something to eat. Like, it's literally, I'll say it. I'll like, oh, I need something to eat. And I'm just like a nervous wreck. And then it's just like, but why do I need something? Like, what is this? And it's that realizing that all this trauma, like you said, the adult trauma, what? Like the adult trauma, the childhood trauma, like I'm still trying to mill through that as well, as best as I can. Because even some of that stuff is like, do I remember everything? Right?
And
it's wild.
I think for the childhood traumas, I have learned, I'm not there yet. Forgiveness is key.
Yes.
Now, forgiveness is key for everything, but for the childhood trauma, I was a child, whatever, I grew up in my family with a lot of dysfunction, and a lot of violence. Which I think a lot of Black families have gone through. You just spoken about it. It's not necessarily the physical all the time, but it's the emotional, it's the mental. And it was not done in a way, it wasn't done cruelly. It was done to protect you from the traumas that they faced, to get you that thick skin to face what you have to face in this skin in the world. That's just a reality.
Right.
That, but at the same time, I've, as a parent now, I can say, okay, I understand why my parents may have made that decision because they thought it was the best at the time.
Right.
Then life happened and I got older, and then I started crossing paths with people that I'm just going to say were trying to kill me. Because the level of trauma that was inflicted in my marriage and just people I was working with.
Right.
Just, if God was not with me, I would have lost my mind.
Yep.
My body was already breaking down. It got to the point when you talk about eating, I was so exhausted from everything, the weight of everything. And literally to keep me going, I would go to Walgreens after work. And I worked in charter schools, which were like 14-hour days.
Okay.
Basically.
That's a lot. Yeah.
I would go and get 20 ounces of Coke and a pound of peanut M&Ms. And I would eat them on the way every day. And one day I sat in bed and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm eating myself. I'm going to kill myself if I keep eating all this. I'm winding with diabetes and die because I'm literally eating a pound. I'm counting the empty bags.
Right.
And it's like, this is not healthy. What's wrong? What is going on? And that was just like the first flag. So I stopped eating those and then just went on to something else. So I didn't make the connection that I need to address it. And then it got to a point where my body literally gave out on me. And I'm like, they had to call the ambulance at school because I was exhausted.
Right.
And I was in pain and all these physical ailments started coming up. And then it was like, okay, you need to do it. But thinking I needed to only do it with my head and those thoughts. Well, you just need to have a system. You need to watch portion control. You need to go exercise. You need to blah, blah, blah. And I did it. I had 2 times where I lost 100 pounds each time.
Right.
And then, but I never, with the emotional part, like you're talking about, I never figured out how to release that or whatever to do with it. So I just stuffed it down. And now it's to the point where I don't want to stuff these things down anymore. They need to be heard. Black women need to be heard.
Yes.
We need to stop doing this to ourselves because it's painful and we don't know what else. We don't know what to do.
Right.
It's basically, yeah.
It's wild because what I was taught was that as a Black woman, we just had to handle it. We just had to take care of it or tough it out. You'll figure it out. Yeah. And it's like, at this point, like you said earlier, I'm tired. Like, I want someone else to carry the load at this point. And I'm not saying that I am not going to be, responsible for what is what's essential in certain situations. But at some point, there has to be a time where we can just be and not try to be that strong person. Like, why can't I just exist in this body as Alicia, not as this strong Black woman that has to have all this criteria to meet? And if I step out of line, then I'm, put back into this category of, oh, you have this attitude, or you're an angry black woman, or whatever. Why can't I just exist as a being on this earth that just wants to spread love and joy and empower? Like, why is that so hard? It's crazy.
No. First of all, we are the first mothers.
Yes.
And so I always want to say that we are the first mothers, and I've met so many women who have now embraced that. We are the first mothers, and we have these crowns, and they've never fallen off.
Right.
We just need to make sure that they're on straight.
Yes.
I can't remember the young lady's name. Every time I think about her story, the young lady everybody knows who recently basically was ambushed and butchered. That's my opinion. I have the facts. The young lady in Mexico.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm sitting there and I'm listening and I'm just like, dear God, like the savagery against this Black who just really, when you hear her mother speak, she was loving because she wanted to be loved. She just wanted to be loved. And that turned into her now not having her life.
Right.
because she aligned herself, or people attached themselves when they weren't good for her anyway.
Right.
They didn't mean her any good.
Right.
And because she was hurting and wanted to be loved, these people came in, and now she's not here to do the things she was supposed to be here to create.
Right.
She doesn't have her family, her legacy does not go on.
Right.
And it's just like, so we can stand there and we can watch people do this to not only her, but there have been countless other Black women. And we watch and we remove ourselves rather than saying we deserve to be protected.
Right.
We deserve, just like every other woman, to be cared for and protected. Or it comes from the place of, well, we can't do that because you're so angry. Have you ever stopped to really think about why emotionally? I'm not talking about the money and the this and the material things. You ever stop to ask yourself, why is it that this Black woman that sits before me that I'm viewing as angry, and I got a whole thing about anger because that's just another way to police our voice.
Right.
Because all Black women are angry. You're not angry. Right. I'm not angry. Right. And if we were, it's an honest emotion.
Right.
But that's the first thing we go to dismiss our humanity as a woman, as a human being, and that we're not worthy of what you think we should be worthy of. And it's time for Black women to start taking it. It's time for us to get some things together.
Yes, for sure.
We got to get real with ourselves. We need to put our crowns back on and say, we've had enough. This is enough. We got to stand together.
Right.
As Black women, because like to your point, we steadily trying to pull each other down.
Right.
And
oh, I thought sorry. No, I think too, it's also coming into, and I can speak for myself on this, but I've talked to a few other people about this, but it's because of the lack of humanity that people, how do I say this? Well, the lack of humanity that is seen for the Black woman. Like we're a lot of times we're not seen as a human being. And so I think because that's been something that's been ingrained, that's something I have to unlearn too. It's like me learning that I am human. And on top of that, I have a body that I need to love and care for. Because for so long I lived, if that makes sense, I lived outside of this body. It was like I was watching this body as opposed to being inside this body. So really listening to the cues of my body. Is this really good for me right now? Are these people good for me? Should I be in this conversation right now? Should I be in this situation right now? Should I, whatever, right? I never took the time to really hone into Alicia and say, is this good for us? If not, we got to figure this out. I've always just kind of allowed things to happen, or I just kind of like fall in line. It's like, that thing is another big thing for me, and Black women in general, us really honing into, this is my body, this is what God has blessed me with, and because He's blessed me with this, I need to honor it in every way, shape, and form. And that's mentally, physically, spiritually, all the things. And whatever that is requiring me to feel good, I need to do that to honor myself and to honor other Black women, because once they see that honoring is acceptable, because I think it's another thing too, is it acceptable for me to do this? Once you see that acceptance is there, it's like, I can do this. I have the ability. She's doing that. Yes, we all can fall in line and accept and love one another in ways that was never shown before. But it just takes us really, I guess, loving on one another and realizing we're not in competition. No one's better than the other. There's no hierarchy. We're all women in this world trying to make it better. And that's what we do anyway. We clean up the mess half the time anyway without the recognition. You know? So why not do that and call each other out? Like, girl, you did that. You know what? I love that. I love that what you did. Bring that empowerment, because it's like the more positivity, like we said before, it's going to change the scene in ways that we can never imagine.
Yeah. So how did you? Because to hear you say that now is right where I am. Because like I told you before, like the other 2 times, I dropped the weight, but it came right back on. I didn't learn anything. I just learned how to follow this religion of dieting in order to, you know, get a result. And then I was done. But now, like what you just said is, I think where I'm at, where I have to learn how to bring myself back into my body and love myself and my body and all of the ways. And so how did you get to that point?
So
in your journey?
Let me just say, it's still a journey. It's still a journey. I was sexually abused as a child. And so I think that, along with me being a Black woman in this society, was even more reason for me to be out of this body, because what I felt about this body was it wasn't enough, and that it was only used. It was used. It was just something that was used for purposes that I didn't. How do I say this? It was used in the way of for servicing men, or for servicing whoever, whatever, or whatever that looks like. Or if I needed to do something like to care for someone, because I'm a nurse practitioner, that's my trade. I knew I could care for people with this body, so I used it for that. But then once I really started thinking about my body as something that was loved and cared for, it wasn't until I met my wife. And her really, I remember when we were dating, she took me to a spa. And I just could not stop crying. I kid you not, I was crying. And she was just like, what is going on? I was like, I don't even know. She's like, I was like, why would you do this for me? Like, what are you doing? And she's like, you deserve nice things. You deserve, like, you deserve. And that hit me so hard. And I was like, I deserve nice things. I'm so used to giving people nice things. I like to see people happy. I like to see them, whatever. But for me, like, I deserve it. And so when I realized that someone could love me as me, and at the time that we met and we were dating, I was like 280 pounds at that point. And that was another thing too for me, was just being vulnerable with my body and exposing my body. Because obviously, I mean, let's be serious. I've had sex, you know, whatever, but there was always that barrier that I would hold up. It's like, okay, we're only going so far with this. Like, I don't want you to see all this. Like, turn these lights off. Let's just turn these lights off. But
oh my gosh,
just to see me and be okay with me, it was like, oh, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay. And all the things that I've, you know, from trauma and, you know, like the society has taught me, I'm realizing, that's just something that's been made up to like fit some type of narrative to appease whoever, right? That's not
right.
That's not that. I don't have to live under those standards. This person loves me for me. And this is as of late. I'm talking about like 2017 we met.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
So it's still a journey. And then once I realized that I could be loved, certain things started kind of like opening up to me. It's like, oh, I can, you know, enjoy a meal, like actually sit down and eat it and enjoy it and not wolf it down. And then because my brain and stomach connection hasn't happened, then I'm then eating more because it hasn't said, okay, you're satisfied, because I've wolfed it all down, right? I can actually enjoy a meal, take the time to let my brain and stomach come together and say, we did it. We had a really good time. This food was great and we don't need any more.
That's beautiful.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm 44 years old and I'm just getting to the point. I was saying to my wife the other day, I was like, you'll be so proud of me. I actually took the time to eat and like enjoy it, as opposed to whoop it down. Like, I'm still hungry. No, I'm not. It's just a thing. I'm just used to it. I'm used, it's something to keep me busy because I don't want to focus on all the other things. Right. But to really just take that time and say, my body is okay. Like, we're okay. Like, I literally have to talk to myself sometimes, like, you're okay. We ate. Let's get some water, or let's just maybe walk, take a walk. And that's another thing too, is like talking to ourselves. So, people always say, if you talk to yourself, you're crazy. No, we still can talk to ourselves. Talk to yourself, because it also brings you back to your body and who you are. Right?
Like, a whole conversation.
Yes.
All the time. And I'm not ashamed of it. Because I've heard similar, that it's also talking to yourself is a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm not a medical practitioner.
Right.
But I'm like, I just need to get things out. You call it what you want to call it.
Right.
I just need to play this or get myself amped up.
Right.
And talk myself into doing the thing. You know what I mean? So you are your biggest cheerleader. That's how I look at it. And I see people, I know, when people, when they're driving. And the thing about Bluetooth now is that everybody's talking to themselves, I like to think, but you just can't tell because they got on Bluetooth in the car, so you don't really know. But that's your thing. I have whole conversations. I feel good about it.
Right, exactly. I think for me, and like I said, and like you were saying too, it's just like, technically, these are all these technical, scientific, terms and this, that, and the other. As of late, we're just learning about mental health in ways that we should have known about it a long time ago. So some of these things, it's like, okay, that's great that you have said that. But also with this too, it's like everything's not cookie cutter. And that's another thing in the medical profession too, we're learning. Not everybody's body is going to respond in the way that we would think with certain therapies and certain interventions, and even with certain diseases. Like, you could be diagnosed with something, but then realize, it's a subset of this other thing. So we also have to address that as well. And so opening up our minds to this idea of everything is not in a box, right? Really just kind of keeping things open, so we give people the ability to, one, tell their story, believe them, and then find ways to help them with that. Because if we keep everything, oh, no, you're in this box, you're in that box. No, there's no way that can be happening because this is what happens in the box. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Names. I always think, we have to be careful about names and labels, because when we name things, we give things a form and a function.
Yes.
And then we also give a perspective on how we're supposed to engage and interact or deal with that thing. Right. And so, I agree in that sentiment, because my father used to call my auntie crazy and just dismiss her. She wasn't crazy at all. She just peeped your bull. Yeah. And it was like everybody started attaching that label to her, and she started attaching that label to herself. So it's labels. We get, life and death is in the power of the tongue. And so we have to be mindful of giving labels to people and things, and receiving it as such. Like, we all need to walk around, I think, with some type of barrier that says, nope, let it bounce off. What was that? I'm rubber, you're glue. Yeah. Like, we need to bring that back into play, rotation, because everybody is absorbing this. And then you wind up, like you said in your story that you shared at the very beginning, you wind up taking on a burden that God never meant for you to take on.
Right.
I had a friend who, people would come to me and ask me, was my friend a part of the LGBTQ community? And I was like, no, that's just my friend. And I would just go on. I mean, from students to professional to colleagues, like, you should know better. Like, don't even come to me with that. It was like years we were friends that I just saw my friend as my friend. Right. My friend came out, and now that I realize that was the only way that they could do it at the time, because they were hoping that they wouldn't be rejected. Right. Right. So I'm honestly like, I hope this person, and we talked about it, like, I wasn't in denial. I was just like, but you're not, though. And they were like, but what if? And I was like, but you're not. And it was like, so I just kept going back and forth, like, my mind. And then it hit me as I left, that because I, like you, was following religion. Yeah. And not the relationship with God. And the religion part was having me to think those same things. Oh my God, my friend, they're going to burn, and they're going to do this, and they're going to do that. And like, can I not be their friend anymore? Blah, blah, blah. I'll never forget. I was at the Quick Trip gas station. Yeah, I don't know if you have those in New York, but we have them in Atlanta all the time.
Not in New York, but I've seen
I'm getting gas. I called my mom. I called my best girlfriend. I called my ex-boyfriend. And I'm crying on the phone like, just told me like they were, gay. And they were like, you didn't know? Like all of them. They were like, really? My mom was like, really? You didn't know? And I was pumping gas. I'm like, what am I going to do? Because they're my best friend. And God spoke to me in my spirit and said, you do nothing.
Right.
I said, what? He said, it's not your job to judge anybody. He said, your job is to love him with God, with my love.
Right.
And that was the end for me.
Right.
So you love people with the love that God gives you. But my mom was like, Chrissy, what? Girl? And girl, bye. Like she was backing on chicken, watching Law and Order or something. She's like, girl, bye. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then after that, it was like, it was so simple. It's so simple just to love people.
Right.
In the way that they have been created, without the labels, because people go through their own turmoil. And now, you said it and I saw it with a different set of eyes. That for that person to say that, for my friend to say that to me, took a lot.
Right.
It took a lot. There was a lot on the line.
Yeah.
I mean, they knew me, so they kind of like, well, she don't get it. I'm going to have to say it again. But but it took a lot for that person to have the courage to share that with, and that vulnerability in that moment. And the least we can do for people is just to listen.
Right.
With no judgment, no label, know what you think should happen. Just be present enough to listen.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's wild that you mentioned that, because I was listening to a podcast yesterday that discusses like having hard conversations, and they were talking about something similar to this, where the person, like if a person comes to you saying they want to share that they're a part of the LGBTQ community, actually this person was polyamorous, and so they were saying that they went to their family to share this information, but that hope was, that they could have the conversation with the person, or basically you need to have a conversation with yourself first, saying that, yes, you're going to share this hard thing with them, but you have to be okay if that person is not acceptable of what you're going to share, and be okay with the fact that they might not want to be in your life anymore. And if that is something that you are okay with, then, obviously, you can move forward, or even if not, right? Like still try to have that hard conversation with them, and also let them know, like, I'm sharing this with you because you mean so much to me. And I want you to be a part of my life. And this part of me is something that I also want you to know about. Like, this is who I am. And I've held it from you for whatever reasons, but because I am now at a place where I am, open and willing to share this with you, I hope that this is something that you will be okay with. If not, then you have to work that out. They have to work that out on their own, because that's not for you to do. But the intention is, when someone is sharing something like that, it's because they love you enough to say, hey, you are in my life, you're important, and I want to now move forward in my truth with you because I love you,
That's a really nice way to put it.
Yeah.
I want to move in my truth with you, because I'm myself upon a time, and I'm sure other people would just be like, well, why don't you just live your life? Like, you want to tell everybody everything don't need to be on Front Street. But to hear you say it that way, I mean, that's gotta be tough.
Yeah.
To keep something about yourself to yourself. Because you don't know how people are going to receive it. But to your point, does it really matter if you receive it? I just need to say it. So I'm going to say it. There it is. Here's what I like, but I'm okay either way.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember those times when people would say, why do you have to say that you're gay? Why can't you just live your life and blah, 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 blah. I was like, well, it's easy to say that, but like if I'm in conversation with someone, I'm married to a woman, and they're talking about their spouse, their kids, and their family, and this, that, and the other, I'm just taking in their story, and I can't share my story because they might be uncomfortable. Like, you know what I'm saying? And that's because of what society has considered normal. That's what we've been conditioned to think. So because of that, I have to then suppress who I am as a person and basically lie to you and just pretend like I don't have this whole other life because I don't want to upset you, or I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable when we have these casual conversations, you know?
Yeah. From your experience, and then we really have to talk about your podcast.
Yeah.
I'm listening, and I'm like, this is such a great conversation. So this is just another episode. We'll figure out what the title will be. But it's also like, man, nobody knows what she does. Like, you just said you were a nurse practitioner. I didn't even introduce you. So, I forgot my question. It's just based on what you said about you feeling you have to guard yourself. Do you think that it's like people are, I don't want to put you on the spot like that. Like from your experience.
I'm an open book.
Do you find, okay. But but you're also not the monolith for the LGBTQ community. Like I'm not the monolith for being a Black woman. So I don't want to, again, I'm not trying to find nobody. So, yeah. Have you found in your experience, is it more of the, I might be answering my own question, but is it just the shock of it being something different that I'm just not used to? When you set out the people who are extremely religious and will extremely have their viewpoint, for the other people, the other third, let's say, like, is it just like, oh, it's so different? Is that where the uncomfortableness would lie? Or is it, I wouldn't want to say shame.
Right. No, shame.
I don't want to assume there, but
I think it's very complex, right? And I think that's why it's so hard for some people to really put it into words, their sense of being uncomfortable with having these conversations, because there's a piece of religion, there's a piece of what we've been taught. There's a man and a woman, they, procreate, they get married. So that's always been a part of the construct. And then there's also the idea, I mean, we could go on and on. There's also the idea that I find that some people, when they are I shouldn't say all LGBTQ people, but I've experienced people fearing that now that they are knowing this about you, are you trying to hit on them? Are you going to try to convince them to be, gay or whatever that looks like? And so that, you know what I'm saying? That's still a part of the fabric. People are like, oh, are you trying to turn me gay? I'm not thinking about you. Trust and believe. And most people.
No, go ahead.
No, but it's
something against.
In this community, they're trying to find people that want them. This is not a predatory type of approach. I've been around predators. I was sexually molested, so I know what that looks like. I'm not here to groom anybody. I'm obviously married now, but when I was dating, I knew that I'm, looking for a woman that wants to settle down. I'm not here trying to turn people a certain way. I don't care. I just want to be a part of this world and not be seen as, oh, just this lesbian woman that's going to hell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Because it's funny that I think that everyone, because I remember a time when I wound up going to a club. Okay, picture it. I first moved to Atlanta. And at the time I did not know that was the Black gay Mecca.
Right.
Although my friend who was gay gave me an Elin Harris book and was like, here, read this. And I'm like, I don't know, these some good books. So I started reading all of them. I'm like, ooh, juicy. And he was like, you still don't get it. You so simple, but that's me.
I love it.
Book smarts, but not a lot of street smarts, as I like to say. Anyway, I remember going to a club and I had a friend, a coworker invite me And she was like, well, let's go see some break dancers. I'm like, okay, they're going to be on the stage. They're going to break dance. We're going to sit down like a concert. It wound up being this club. I can't remember the name of the club, but it was the club that was across from this Kroger, which was very entertaining on a Friday night. Because the freaks come out at night. Everybody just fights, all that kind of stuff. But it was an old garage that you had to walk down into in order to be in the club. So we get there, we're there early. Like there wasn't a lot of people. I'm waiting on these break dancers. It wound up being a gay bar.
Right.
I didn't know. And I thought I wasn't supposed to be there because I was like, oh wait, is she trying to hit on me or other people? And then they were like smoking pot. And then there was a teacher in Georgia. I'm like, oh, if I get caught, oh my gosh, I'm gonna lose my license. I'm gonna da-da-da-da-da. So I'm sitting in the corner, like, clutching my purse the whole night. She didn't dance like all this time. She's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm fine. She's like, yeah, the marijuana is pretty bad. I'm like, you knew this? So long story short, the breakdancers didn't come till like the last 30 minutes before the whole club was gonna close. Right. These dudes throw out girl. Look, Johnson & Johnson baby powder. They throw it on the floor and proceed to start breakdancing. But because everybody's high, of course, everybody's like, woo woo, Right. And so I'm just sitting in the corner like, let me get through this night. Oh my gosh, you tried to hit on me. And I felt bad because after that, I always felt awkward around her.
Right.
So it's nice to hear like where people's minds are. Just like my mind wouldn't be on hitting on everybody. Thank you. I just wanted to just throw that in there. Like you helping me to repent on some things tonight. Thank you.
I love it because even, I remember when I was a kid, I mean, obviously I knew that I was gay then, but I was still just kind of like struggling with that whole thing. I remember seeing Ellen DeGeneres on Oprah Winfrey. Not that she's like the role model of lesbians, but like, I remember seeing her. I'd seen her in other shows, and she had her own show and all this. And I never thought of her as anything but this talented white woman, whatever. And then when she said that she was gay, it really opened my eyes up to, oh, this is not just this debaucherous type of lifestyle. Like this is a person who's pursuing dreams, who's trying, who wants to make people laugh. She's a comedian. Like there are more things to her life than just being a gay woman, a lesbian woman.
Yes.
And I think that's another thing too, is that and that's something I really strive to do, is to have people see me as Alicia and all the things that are me. I'm not just this lesbian. I'm a mom. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have a pod. You know what I'm saying? There are more things to me than this particular thing. And I think that's what some people miss the mark on. It's like, you think you could just kind of put people in this one category. And it's like, that's just a little bit of me. That's not, that doesn't even cover the surface, And I can't imagine, a straight person wanting someone to be walking around like, oh yeah, she's straight. Yeah. Do you know she was straight? You know what I'm saying? Like,
like and sometimes I feel like, again, with the labels, it's like, I understand you're needing to express your truth. And then there's the other part of, I also feel like it's a mantle that you having to put on these blinkers to let everybody know. Why can't you just be you?
Right.
I don't wear a shirt that says I'm straight, y'all. Hear this, and so why are we putting other people in the same boat? It's one thing to be proud of, be proud of who you are. Share who you are. But like you said, it's just, and that's the danger of labels, is that then we start to accept that label, and then that's how we start seeing ourselves. So we can only be that way. We can only operate and move and behave that way. We can only think and talk that way.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're just a human being trying to figure this out.
Right.
Whatever life
whatever that is,
and do it with other humans. Whatever that is. And do it with other humans. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild too, because I remember I was talking to someone, this was years ago, and, I just mentioned that I was gay, but I was trying to do it casual, just like, because I want this to be normalized. Like, oh, yeah, I'm gay, like, blah, 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 and whatever, and then let's just keep talking about the news or the weather or whatever we're talking about. And so they literally stopped in their tracks and was like, you don't look like a lesbian. And I was like, what does that even mean? And I just started laughing. I was like, okay, so am I supposed to be out here, with all, like, I don't know. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. I mean, I understand where they're going with this, but I want you to understand this is not what every person presents like. And I think also to that point, I think people that are in the community feel like they have to meet those standards sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that puts pressure on them to either dress a certain way or act a certain way. And it's just like, just be you. And if it is that you're more masculine presenting or more feminine presenting, whatever. But don't put on because you think this is a role you have to, actually take on. Just be yourself,
It was interesting because in my former role, I had colleagues who were they were out. And a lot of times they would talk about being on code. And I remember when I first heard them say that, I was like, what are you talking about? Code is for Black people. I got to be on code. Like, I remember this conversation, like, you're using code wrong. Like, and they were like, no, but we have to because, and they started to share why. And it was like, oh my gosh, that experience is very similar of the way that we as Black women or any person of color, BIPOC community, has to feel like they have to perform to the expectations of people who don't really know about your life experience, probably don't really care that much because they still trying to figure themselves out and just want to live. It's so funny how we impose, well, I just want to live. That's my little hidden, secret, wish is to just live my life. But then we immediately start to project onto other people and then start telling people, no, you can't live your life because label number 1, label number 2, label number 3.
Right.
So it really helps me in my mind of like, oh, that, first of all, where was I coming? That was my trauma of only Black people can be in code. Like, what? I felt like I own that word. Like, no, you can't. That's our word. Like, what? Right. And they were like, no, you do it too. And it was like, okay, well, thank you for that education. And there's a lot more that's like than different about us.
Right.
And we need to find what's alike because, like I do work in DEI, diversity and equity.
Yeah, equity and inclusion, yeah.
Yeah. And I tell people, diversity, we are naturally diverse. Diversity is what we are. Inclusion is where we need to be. So let's not worry too much about the diversity part because God made everything diverse. Just go out in nature. You'll see biodiversity everywhere.
Right.
Let's stop talking about only diversity. It's the inclusivity part. We don't dictate how we want people to be included. Everyone is included. Right. So where's the space for everyone? And then, and so it's just interesting. It's been interesting. It's been very interesting in just live. That's all. Just let people live. Right. Do the best you can do. Don't harm, cause no harm. Right. And live your life. Like we're just arguing. We're just this and that. I got to represent this, that. I got to represent this, that. I got to stop you. Da, 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 da. And nobody's getting ahead. And I came to the conclusion today, I'm going to die one day. Right. I'm also 44. So I'm going to die. And when I die, damn it, I want to be able to say, out of all the stuff that happened in my life, I have won this game. There is a piece of the game that I have won, and I will win it, and I will see myself winning it before I exit this planet. So it's like all of the trauma, all of the things that come our way in our lives, and then we die, and we can't sit here and say, I kicked that in its ass. Like, I beat that thing. Like, that's how I want to be. I beat that thing. Whatever that thing is, even if it's a small piece of it, I can say I won. And then I feel like I've leveled up. Right. Exactly. Move on to the next life.
Exactly. So, exactly. Yeah. No, I totally get that. It's like just making your mark and making a mark that promotes change and positivity. That's where I'm trying to be. Like, I want to know that I've, whenever my time is, I want to know that if I was in the process of going in that way, that I was doing what I could for this world to be a better place. That's literally it.
This has been the Unlearning Podcast. I hope you enjoyed this little introduction to the show, and I look forward to unlearning with you together in future episodes. If you enjoy the show, which I know you will, please like, share, and subscribe. You can also send me a written or video comment on any of your favorite podcasting apps. This podcast will be available on all podcast platforms. To stay connected, follow me on Christina Jones, the Unlearning Podcast on Facebook, and Unlearn This 2022 on Instagram. Again, thank you for listening, and until next time, what is it that you need to unlearn in your life today to live a better, brighter tomorrow?